Welcome back again. We're here with Congressman Greg Walden. Congressman, a lot more to talk about. I understand you're going to be on the platform for the inauguration.
Yeah, as I was last one with President Obama, I'll be there with President-elect Trump and then President Trump. It's a historical moment. Whether you supported this president or the last president or no president, it is America coming together as we've done. You think about the incredibly inspirational times in our history with those speeches. I think back to what I've seen. I was too young to really remember John Kennedy, but certainly how he inspired a country. You think about the times we've been through since then. This is a time when we come together, and I think you're going to see that again, I hope. Now, there'll be protesters and all that. There often are, not usually, though. So it'll be a different one. I've been there in the sun. I've been there in the snow. I've been there in the rain. I sat next to Beyonce and Jay-Z last time, and even asked her why she pulled her earplug out. Turned out she was lip syncing. That came out later.
Oh,
but it's America. It's really pretty amazing to be part of that. We have a lot of people from the 2nd District, from the Rogue Valley, from the Klamath Basin coming to participate or be there, attend. And so it's an exciting time. We'll have a lot of Oregonians back there, and most of them will be there to join the celebration. I imagine some will be there to protest, and that's part of our democracy.
Yeah, certainly, that's America. So you're also friends with Vice President-elect Mike Pence.
Yeah.
So you guys work together in Congress. You guys know each other. You're both former broadcasters. Tell us about that relationship.
He's a friend. We did work together on some media shield law changes. We worked together to get rid of the fairness doctrine off the books so we could have a vigorous debate on our airwaves. He is a very thoughtful man. I think America's seen that already. They'll see a lot more of it once he gets into office. He has a good heart, a good soul. He's a hard worker. He's thoughtful, caring, and I think he'll be a real force. And I don't know how that relationship will play out, but I tend to think that he will have an oversized role working with the Congress, because he's from the Congress. He was from the House. He's a man of the House. We're giving him an office on the House side, which vice presidents, they're usually over in the Senate, and we're not worthy.
Sure.
We're giving him that opportunity, and he's been to our conference a couple of times. He used to be our conference chair. So, I mean, now, there's been a lot of turnover since he left and went to be governor of Indiana, so a lot of my colleagues don't know him as well as I do, or certainly the Speaker and he are very close. So I think it's good. It's good to have those relationships on the Hill. One of the things that the last administration did not have was strong relationships on Capitol Hill on either side of the aisle. If you talk privately to some of my Democrat counterparts, they'd tell you they didn't really ever have that either. He just had a different governing style. Clinton had a really good set of relationships on the Hill, even though he had the impeachment stuff. His people were there. You worked with them on issues. This President Obama didn't have that. I think President Trump wants that. And so we'll see. The proof will be in the pudding. Let's give the guy a chance to get in place and govern. And there are a lot of Americans looking for real change.
And you've been in the room with him, I believe,
just
over the last couple of months. Okay, what were your impressions of him?
That was back
personally?
In May.
Yeah.
What I saw in the room was not what I expected when I walked in. He was very focused, one-on-one. He listened intently. He asked good questions. He was very respectful back and forth. I didn't know what to expect. We see what we see on TV.
Sure.
And it was a very cordial, very productive discussion with the Republican leadership. That was back in May. And I walked away really, really pleased, really impressed. Now, we're going to have give and take like you do with any administration, as you should. That's how democracy is created. We'll work together where we can. We'll work out our differences where we must. And we'll get the job done for the American people.
I want to ask you about this. It's been very controversial on Capitol Hill. A dossier written by a former British spy with Moscow ties makes a number of unverified claims. I want to be clear to say that. It's nevertheless gotten a lot of people talking, and it's been a secret on Capitol Hill for some time. It just seemed to have gotten out publicly. I know Senator McCain had copies, Senator Reid. It's been out there for a while. It's just now getting out. Any concerns at all with that?
Well, I think that the concern anytime you're in public life is you have people doing opposition research.
Sure.
Some of that is totally false and fake. And I think we've seen in this cycle more and more, and certainly on social media, all kinds of what we call fake news. You can't imagine how much my office deals with incoming things people have read on the internet and believe to be true that are totally false.
You'd be amazed at the calls we get.
Exactly. We spend a lot of time going to Snopes. We spend a lot of time getting to the facts. And I think you have to be really careful in this environment when you release something. Most major news organizations had it too and never could verify anything in it.
That's right. Yeah.
BuzzFeed chose to produce the whole report on the whole thing as if it were the truth. I think the Washington Post, Fox, others have had it. Nobody could verify it. And so that's troubling because it's then taken as gospel. And we'll see. I mean, I'm sure somebody's looking into it. And frankly, we ought to look into what the Russians have done. I don't care whether they were supporting one candidate or the other. They shouldn't be messing in our elections, period, end of story. By the way, they probably weren't the only country doing that. And now, they were certainly the ones out front, but I have to believe other countries mess around our elections. By the way, we used to have something called Voice of America. We mess around other people's elections too. This goes on, but the good news is there's no evidence that they were able to affect any of the actual voting, the voting machines. All that seems to be firmly in place. That's what's been said publicly. It's a matter of persuasion. But they do this around the world, by the way, the Russians. They're actively, I'm convinced, trying to engage in this type of manipulation of messaging in other countries. When I was in Lithuania a year ago, they complained about it there, that there was an organized effort out of Russia, their border with Russia, to try and affect the stability of that government. You know they must be doing that in Ukraine. I mean, this is just how they behave. They're very engaged.
It's kind of modern espionage.
We need to, it is, and using the modern social media tools. We need to be aggressive about pushing back on that. We need to be, they use Russian television. I mean, it's branded, it's on cable.
It's state-owned.
It's state-owned manipulation of messaging. And so, I mean, I see that every once in a while. It's like Russian television, interesting. And it's just a propaganda tool that's cloaked as if it's a legitimate news organization. So they're very clever at what they do, and sometimes it seems to be facilitated by some, and other times it's clandestine, and other times it's ham-handed. So we're pretty good at what we do and pretty good at weeding out and watching and pushing back. But I think we have to be pretty aggressive about it, especially with Russia. I mean, no country should do what they did and walk away scot-free. And it just strikes me that they were doing it for a long time. I think it first went public back in the summer. That's when something should have been done to the Russians right then and there. But I don't think anything happened as far as I know. So why didn't the Obama administration weigh in then and tell them, stop it? And we've got ability to affect things in Russia. So,
again, I appreciate you doing this extended interview. One last question. Do you foresee any troubles in the cabinet members' confirmations upcoming? You
know, you always have some cabinet officials have an easier time getting confirmed than others for a whole host of reasons. I'm not in the Senate. I'm not sitting in those hearings. But certainly there are some that will be easier to confirm than others. And oftentimes, in I think most administrations, there's probably one that never quite gets through, or a judicial appointment that never quite gets through. We'll see in this case. I mean, that's all teed up to go forward. I think he's appointed some really, really successful people who have credentials of managing big organizations, and frankly, that's what you do in those positions. And others have incredible records of service to our country in the cause of freedom. And so it's a pretty powerful team. But by the way, that's the right of the president to appoint his cabinet. And he should have that right. Hillary Clinton should have had that right if she'd been president. And so I think, you know, President Obama had that right. Now they got to meet a certain threshold, and that's what this confirmation process is all about. But they need to get approval, and they need to get up and running. There are some 12,000, I think it is, Senate confirmations that they have to go through. So it's a pretty laborious process. Now, a lot of them just get waved, you know, they're vetted and they're waved through in blocks, but it's a lot of work the Senate has to do. I appreciate you coming. Thanks so much. Good to see you. Thanks for watching this NBC5 Web exclusive.